Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is Adrian Danila, your host, and this is Multifamily Chronicles. Our guest today is Jason Kay. Jason is a well-known author, and he's a leader in our industry. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
Jason, I do wanted to say before I let you introduce yourself to the audience that you had experience on both operations side and also on a supplier partner side. So I want you to tell us about your background and just kind of detail about both experiences and what you like about both.
Oh yeah, sounds good. So I've been in the multifamily industry since about 2006. I got in as, I think a lot of people got in. It wasn't an intentional career. It was almost a career of chance. I was living in Chicago at the time, and I was pursuing a career in the arts. I was looking to direct stage plays, produce stage plays, and I needed a day job. And so I had a friend with whom I did a production, and she said, "Hey, I manage a property. Why don't you come be a leasing agent?" And I said, I don't know what that is. What's a leasing agent?" And she said, "Well, it's kind of like a salesperson. It's kind of like an actor. You basically prep like a script for yourself, and you tour people around a community, and you try to get them to live there." I said, "Yeah, sure. Sign me up. Sounds good." So that's really how I started. And then I started a smaller community. I quickly found out that lease ups can be where the money's at. So I found a lease up in downtown Chicago and somehow got myself involved with that. And then about a year and a half, maybe 2 years into my multifamily career, my wife and I found out that we were going to have twins. And so very quickly, I pivoted from the artistic pursuit, which didn't have a lot of financial gain or, stability with insurance and things like that. And so I really focused on the multifamily industry. And I said, man, this has lots of opportunity for growth. I mean, I could move from a leasing agent to an assistant, to a manager, to a regional, there's to a VP. There's so much room for growth that I said, okay, well, I'm going to focus on this. I was doing really well as a leasing agent. And so I stuck with that. And I was on the property management side until 2019. And then I moved over to the vendor side. And that has been an awesome experience too. I tell you what, the multifamily industry, whatever side you're on, whether it's vendor, whether it's PMC, have some of the best people to work with, are some of the most innovative people that you can work with. And it's just, it's been an exciting journey so far. And I don't think I'd have changed a thing.
Jason, as someone that who has held every role on site, on a management side, with office teams, what unique insights have you gained about the industry and its challenges?
So you're right. I've been a leasing, an assistant. I was a move-in coordinator at one point. If you remember when we had paper leases and we had to sit down and sign those, my only job was to sit down with residents and go through the lease, have them sign on all the dotted lines, et cetera. Was a property manager for a long time. And that experience really allowed me to see how you can operate as almost your own entrepreneur, right? As a business manager, I felt ownership of my asset and my team almost like I was a small business owner. And for me, that was a really unique experience. Other companies that I'd worked, I just felt like I was part of the staff. I didn't feel real like ownership in the company or where I was working. And so that was a really unique experience for me and something that I really liked a lot. I think there's always an opportunity when you have these almost like franchise type experiences as a leader to bring all that together under one cohesive umbrella can be a challenge. I don't think it's unique to multifamily to keep everyone unified, but for any business where you have this business model where you can potentially have silos, I think keeping everyone consistent, keeping your brand consistent against all of your assets can be a challenge, but it's an ongoing challenge. I don't know that anyone will ever figure it out 100%, Some PMCs do it better than other PMCs. So it's possible, but I think that's one of the ongoing challenges for the multifamily industry.
I love the fact that you're bringing a ownership mentality into the conversation. In my experience, everybody that I've met with ownership mentality went really, really far in their career, because that's basically what makes the difference between someone with a drive, with that type of vision and mentality, and someone that doesn't have it. Typically people with ownership mentality get really far in life in general, not only in their career. So as you being on both sides, right, the supplier side and also on the side of management, what are some things that you think our industry could do better on the operations side to build meaningful relationships with our vendor, with our supplier partners?
I think that's it, is the relationship part. And again, right, we're talking about taking industry vendor relationships from really good to amazing, right? So when I look at the industry and its partnership with vendors, it's great. But how do we continue to evolve? How do we grow to that next level? And I think one of those things is, as markets get soft, whether we're booming or we're on a downturn, to remember that everyone in the industry is experiencing that. And so how do we move through it together as partners? How do we enjoy the good times as partners? And how do we navigate the leaner times as partners? And I think remembering that it's never, I don't know anyone in the industry like this. I'm sure there are people, but it's never like vendors versus PMCs or PMCs versus vendors and only one can survive, right? It's not Thunderdome. We need to remember that we're all in it together. And if vendors do great, PMCs are doing great. If PMCs do great, vendors do great. And so I just think continuing that mentality of we're all in this together. And if one of us doesn't survive, the other one definitely won't survive.
I agree with you. I always say that in order for a business deal to work, both sides had to benefit. So if it's going to be one-sided, to where only one side has something to gain, and the other one doesn't, or not so much, that is really not a good deal. It's not a long-lasting relationship. It's just not going to go well long-term, right?
Yeah.
A quick gain, it's actually no gain at all, ultimately.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I think that a lot of times the onus is on the vendor to really prove out their value and what is the return on investment. And, sometimes that can be challenging with more like experiential products, right? The PMC is always wanting to provide a better experience for their residents. And sometimes those things, you can't draw a direct line from the service or the software that the vendor provides directly to the bottom line, right? And say, I invested in this, I got my resident experience upticked 1 point, and now I've got an extra blah, blah, blah in the bank. And so when vendors come to the table, it's imperative that they show value, but also on the PMC side to have that mentality of, is this a soft improvement that I can't draw a direct line to? And if it does, then maybe we invest in that, because if ultimately our goal is to have the greatest resident experience, we're going to have to take some things on, some expenses that I can't draw a direct line to the NOI on, or the ROI.
So sometimes for the operators is about, taking a leap of faith and believing in a sales pitch and just saying, hey, looks like, this could be working, right? I'm trusting you as a person. Let's give it a shot. Am I saying this?
Yeah, instead of a leap of faith, I would almost say a well-informed decision, right? If you're looking at the options out there around resident experiences, and maybe as an operator you can't draw a direct line to the ROI, you can say, okay, the circumstantial evidence shows me that this is going to be positive for my residents, and what's positive for my residents is positive for my bottom line. And so I can, make a an easy assumption that this will be a positive influence on my company financially down the road.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We could make decisions well informed, but when we don't have enough data point, like enough history to say this is what data shows, right? KPIs.
Yeah.
How is your product improving my bottom line? Just like you were saying earlier on, you still had to have some faith, put some faith into that, because
Correct.
the data point is missing. It's just not there.
Yeah.
So you have no way of knowing, exactly. It's not really a science. So it just has to be, it has to take some faith in order for things to happen.
And that's where that relationship comes in, right? That trust comes in and saying, hey, in the past, we've had a great relationship. We've grown together financially. So yeah, we're gonna take on this new product or service and run with it.
100%. Next, I would like to dive into the book that you wrote. And
excellent.
This is a unique concept, right? I'm hearing about it. Maybe you invented it, right? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
The rainforest team culture. So I'd like to ask you to talk a little bit about your book and elaborate on a rainforest team culture leadership framework that you developed during your time as a property manager.
Yeah, absolutely. So to give you a little bit of context, how this all started and me to put some pieces together is I had a leader in my past who checked all the boxes of what you consider a good leader to be. We had regular one-on-ones, there were goal setting meetings, team meetings, et cetera, things like that. And typically when you have leadership classes, those are the things that are focused on, right? And so as an employee, I was like, okay, this person's checking all the boxes, good leader, seems to be like a really good leader. But then it started to ring a little hollow. And so when I took some time to reflect on it, what I realized was there was kind of a foundation that was missing. So there was another employee on the team it was a pretty toxic employee, pretty combative, really didn't get along with a lot of people. And when we would bring up some of these challenges to the leader, we were met with well, they're a high performer. And so, I'll talk to them, but at the end of the day, they're really producing for our team. So we'll have to kind of figure it out. And Adrian, what I figured out was the activities of meeting with your employees, one-on-ones and goal settings, those are all around growth and engagement and how do you get them, to invest in the company mentally and emotionally. But what it was missing from that team was this foundation of satisfaction. Nobody was happy. Nobody felt safe. Nobody felt motivated. There was very little enthusiasm about coming to work because of this team member. And so those engagement activities of goal setting and one-on-ones, they rang hollow and there were no roots. And so I was reading an article and it was about Earth's ecosystems. And I saw this chart and it mapped out all of the ecosystems and it had rainfall on the left-hand side and it had temperature on the horizontal axis. And what it looked like, and if you're okay, I can share the screen and kind of show you what that looks like.
Absolutely, by all means.
Okay. We've disabled sharing. Well, no worries. Let me just talk you through it. Maybe I'll send you a copy of it afterwards. But it was like a 45-degree angle and all of the ecosystems were under that. And what that showed me was no ecosystem can exist without some level of rainfall first, or without some level of temperature first. So if you think about a frozen tundra has very little rain and very little temperature, very cold, no rain. A desert, on the other hand, has very little rain, but really high temperature, okay? And then a rainforest has high of both. Now, there's no ecosystem on Earth that has high rainfall and low temperature. It can't exist. It doesn't exist. And so what that told me was when I correlated satisfaction to temperature and engagement to rainfall, it just all kind of fell in place for me. And when you think about our team cultures, you can't have people who are engaged unless they are on some level satisfied. And that's the temperature, right? You can have a desert style team culture where everyone enjoys each other. They show up and they're excited to see one another. They feel like they get paid a good amount of money or they enjoy their benefits for what they do, but they're not engaged. They're not going above and beyond. They're not being innovative. They're not developing themselves or the business. And so this framework just kind of fell into place. And when I thought about this, it really like set off a bell in my head. I was like, this is the piece I've been missing around my leadership. I have been focusing maybe on things like, are people happy? Are we having pizza parties? Are we doing lunch? And then I jump over to things like, are we trying to be innovative? Do I have a higher purpose? Am I doing goal settings? But there was no rhyme or reason to the way I was doing it. So that kind of fluctuated our performance and my leadership style and et cetera. So once I was able to map that out, I had strategic pillars that I could focus on to drive our engagement and our satisfaction levels up and ultimately achieve that rainforest status. And so that's where the idea came from. And then I thought, man, I want to share this. I've been in learning and development for a while. And so part of my passion is to help other people do better at whatever it is they're doing. And with leadership being one of my big passions, it just made sense to put this down in book form to share with other people. And the book, like you said, is unique. I wrote it as a story. It's a narrative. It's not a clinical depiction of how to lead a team. It tells the story of a woman named Eliza, who's a property manager, who comes on to a new asset. It's the biggest asset she'd ever managed with a brand new company. And very quickly, she discovers that the team that she's inherited is pretty toxic. And this challenge, even though Eliza in the book had been leading teams for 10 years in multifamily, this team was a little beyond her capabilities. And so she engaged a former boss and mentor of hers, who then teaches her this ecosystem framework. And chapter by chapter, she goes through and demonstrates what each pillar looks like and some really like honest, practical ways to implement them into your team. And then too, at the end of each chapter, there's call to action sections where the reader is invited to document some of their thoughts, write down some assessments about their own team. I wanted this to be not only entertaining, but like a legitimate tool that people could use to self-analyze and then do some work that they need to do.
Jason, I want to pick, you said you're passionate about leadership. Obviously you are. I wanted to ask you, how does your rainforest team culture framework differ from leadership approaches commonly used in multifamily real estate industry?
Sure. I think it's a little different than really any leadership framework. And here's why. I've been in a ton of leadership classes. I've facilitated a lot of leadership classes. I haven't found one yet that gives you a holistic view on what is your job as a leader in regard to building team culture. There are pieces. So any leadership class that you've taken, Adrian, will actually fit into the rainforest culture framework. So if you take a goal setting class, that's not outside of the rainforest framework, that will fit into that nurture part. If you've had difficult conversation, that'll fit into the part around tone and keeping people happy and excited about being at work. So everything that you've taken in the past fits in. But what I haven't found yet, and the reason I created this is the overarching framework, right? So if you think about it like new construction in multifamily, every property has a foundation, every property has plumbing, every property has the studs for the walls. But what makes them different is how you finish the walls, the kitchens, the bathrooms, the flooring, all of those things. My book is the foundation, the plumbing, and those stud walls. That's what was missing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And also what makes the difference out there is, people that are doing it. Because, those finishes don't just happen by themselves.
Yeah.
They have to be driven by people. Like they had to be, people had to make them happen. And that's where people make the difference. And I think leadership in general, it's about people, right? It's not about so much about systems and processes, because you could write the best book about, some systems and processes. And extrapolating a little bit in our industry, we have thousands of management companies, and they all have systems and processes. They have resources. They have a lot of money available to be successful, right? To drive a successful business. But ultimately, what it comes down to, what makes a difference between a very, very effective company and one that's, not doing so well, it's the people that they have, So you could have the best systems in place and the best, financing. And if that people aspect is missing, like everything else doesn't really matter.
Oh,
The systems and processes, they don't just happen by themselves. You have to, you're gonna need people to make those happen.
correct. And the framework gives people a reference to go back to. So if you are leading a team and you are sensing that something's off, or maybe performance is down, you can go back to this framework and look at the pillars of satisfaction and engagement and say, where do I believe I'm lacking right now? And that's where you can then focus, because there are times as leaders, I mean, I don't know your experience coming into leadership for the first time, but for me, I was one of the higher performers at what it was I did. And because of that, I was then moved into a leadership role with very little to none experience about what it means to be a leader. I was lucky enough to have a mentor that I could go to, but my mentor mainly talked about the processes, the procedures, the reports, things like that. Never really talked to me about, hey, here's the best way to build a team. I had to do a lot of that on my own. And if I had had this framework at the very beginning, it could have shortcut a lot of lessons for me, and maybe a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of tears in my office. So yeah, I agree with you. Processes don't define it, but without processes, right? It's like walking through the woods without a compass. You might get somewhere that you want to get eventually, and the compass doesn't per se get you there. You still have to walk over the branches, hack away at the greenery with the machete. You still have to put in the work, but the compass, that's going to help you get to where you need to get faster. And that's really what the book and the framework is.
You definitely have to have that in place. I agree. You can't just show up and wing it every day. Although there's a lot of that we do in life, like maybe way more than we like to admit. You just described, right? You're lucky enough to have a mentor. You just you just found yourself in a leadership position, and you had to figure things out. So definitely there's a praise, right? I'm not speaking for anarchy and just saying, like, just bring people and
and you'll be good.
Everything's gonna be all right. You're being great. You have to have a structure for sure. I'm just saying structure without the people is really not much, right?
Correct.
It's just an empty concept.
Correct.
So people are what who brings meat to the bone.
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
So Jason, what specific aspects of team culture do you believe contribute the most to an organization's success in general?
That's a fantastic question. And my answer for that is innovation. If your company is not being innovative, if your teams aren't being innovative, trying to grow and evolve, ultimately, I don't know that you're long for this world as a business. There's this saying, and I don't know who said it, but if you're not growing, you're dying. And I feel strongly about that. And that's one part of leadership that can be challenging, is to get innovation, because innovation comes later. You can't walk in without having built trust or a culture where people feel free to speak up and share their ideas, where they don't have resources so that they can just do their job as they need to do it. Innovation comes later. Like, imagine, so the people who don't have food, water, and shelter can't enjoy the opera, right? Because they have other worries. And so innovation is like that opera. That's that thing that you need to have all of your needs taken care of so that your employees can then not worry about those, turn their mind to how do we make improvements? And that's where innovation blossoms. So the short answer, innovation.
Yeah, definitely start with the basics, excuse me, and build upon that. And innovation is something that I'm very passionate about. I've been with companies in my past that were very, very ahead of their times, right? Comparing with the rest of the industry. I've learned a lot. I've seen what innovation could do. And actually, once I left a particular company, I went to work for others, like stuff that I learned over there, like it helped me up to this day. Like it really reshaped my whole way of thinking and actually my trajectory, my future trajectory. So this innovation driven culture had a huge, probably the most impact in my career since I left the company. That's like 6-7 years ago already, and I'm still applying things that I've learned over there in my day job, and it helps me become successful. Our industry is not very well known for being at a forefront of embracing innovation and technology. What are some things, or I guess what are some suggestions that you might have for us as an industry, not so much on a supplier side, because there's a lot of innovation out there, especially tech companies. That's all they do. It's innovating. They're trying to come up with solutions. But on a management side, what are some things that you see us embracing as a mindset to do better when it comes to the new stuff, to embrace the new technology, to embrace what's happening in the world out there, like literally.
Yeah, I think you have to think about wherever your focus is as a management company, whether it is your residents or growth. What you have to focus on is just that. That's how you're going to be able to shift from being stagnant to being innovative. If you have like a rallying cry, that's how you're going to go. If you are growing for growth's sake, if you have like a more of a generic rallying cry, like we're going to provide great experiences, even that would be good. Then that's how you're going to be able to focus and innovate in certain areas. Innovation for innovation's sake isn't going to do the job, but focused innovation, that's where it's going to be able to take you to the next level.
Of course, you gotta have to be able to apply again.
Yeah.
I'm seeing the other aspect, like you said, for the sake of innovation. I'm seeing a lot of tech being adopted by management companies, and you see a lot of overlap. Like 2 or 3 things that do the same, 2 applications that do the same thing.
Yeah.
So, and also you have the situation where different technology doesn't talk to each other. So then, is that really benefiting our people, or is it really making it harder for them, trying to figure things out, or go to like 3 or 4 different places to to get the information that they need to just do their job with? So yeah, I definitely agree. It has to be some application. Now, one other aspect that I'm seeing in industry in general is that why are we not innovation driven? Well, for the most part, I'll say because in general, people at the very top have been in their positions for a long time, sometimes for decades. And then when someone has been at the very top for 20 years in the same position, right, running a company, and with great results, right, I have to say, for the most part, you wouldn't be in a position for 20 years or 30 years without having great results, or at least decent results. There's no incentive for them to go out there. Why should we rock the boat? Why should we go out there and like bring our stakeholders even more benefits, more profit? Things are going well. I'm still the top person. The company is doing well. What's the incentive? So the way I'm seeing as the industry being disrupted in a way that more innovation comes in faster is by someone from outside. Chances for innovation to happen industry-wide and being affected by someone, an inside person, I think they're very, they're fairly slim because of what I just explained. So a disruption has to come from someone from outside. Do you disagree with this theory? Do you see it a different way?
I don't disagree. I will. So two things. One, as horrible as COVID was for the world, one of the, and compared to the devastation that it had, one of the small silver linings was it forced the multifamily industry to be innovative. We had to be pushed. We had no choice. And so I agree with you. That was an outside disruptor that forced the next evolution of multifamily. But going back to that idea of team, if there's a senior leader out there who is listening to your podcast and who is thinking, okay, I feel like Adrian's talking to me. I've been in this role for 20 years. I don't feel like I'm, the most innovative. I would encourage them to turn to your team and say, guys, what's the next thing for us? How do we do this? Open this up to people who have been there for less time, or open it up to people who are on property, because those are those frontline employees. Those are the ones who are going to say, Mr. CEO, here's what we deal with every day. Can we change this, or can this be different? Or here's our ideas. So if there's any executive out there who's been in that position for a long time, and deep down inside, you're like, I'm not the one to disrupt my own company. You've got plenty of people in there who will be more than happy to give you some honest feedback. But again, you've got to set that stage for, I am a leader who is open to honest feedback, and then people need to see the results of that honest feedback happen. So while I agree with you, I think there's opportunity within companies to also be disruptive.
Of course, the opportunities exist. I didn't think that they weren't. It's just that, if you can get someone at the top to open to suggestions, and like you said, to go back to the to the roots, a grassroots movement.
Yeah,
people, your frontliners, they know exactly what's going on. They know best what's going on. They're the ones operating your assets, and these are other things that I'm seeing, right? When certain decisions, operation decisions, are being made. I won't say that all the time, but I'm seeing that at times decisions are being made, at the very top, without any feedback from the, from the front line, from our frontline people. And there's a lot of pain, right? Because there's a disconnect. For example, someone like me, I just take my own personal example. I haven't worked on site as a day job for 6 years. So I'm still very active. I'm going to the sites, I'm visiting, but it's not the same thing as like working on a daily basis, working day in and day out on a site. Things have changed. The technology has changed, the needs have changed, the challenges have changed. A lot has changed. Like you said, COVID brought in, a lot of change, and it was unintentional. But I think that part, the innovation part, I agree with you, was an amazing thing that happened to our industry, because it forced us. It was that external factor that forced us into innovation. We had no choice at that point, because one-on-one interaction was not an option. So yeah, that's really, really big. Consulting with your frontline employees. And since you mentioned frontline employees and managers, why do you believe that they play this crucial role in shaping an organization culture? So let's go on the culture piece right now. We kind of describe, right, systems, processes, innovation, but how are they playing this crucial role into shaping the company culture?
I love this question. I was overseas a month ago facilitating some leadership classes, and in the class with these frontline leaders, the conversation we had was, the teams that they lead interact with the customers of the company every single day. They, in a lot of instances, are the face, the voice, the emotion of that company to the customer. And so for me, more than, executives and VPs, that frontline employee, that leasing agent, that manager, that lead service tech, they define a customer's experience more than anyone else in the company. So if that's the case, if you believe that, then in my opinion, they should be some of the most cared for employees that we have. They define who you are as a company to the customer directly and on a daily basis. And so that's where my passion lies for frontline employees.
I remember one of the best quotes that I read was that you can't really have happy customers while you're having unhappy employees.
Oh my God. So yeah, a quote similar to that is your customers can never have a better experience with your company than your employees are having with your company.
Yeah.
So there's a ceiling there.
It truly is. It's just how you expand that ceiling.
Yeah, I had a post a while ago talking about there was a person at the airport who was very direct and grumpy with me around checking in my luggage. And all I could think was, this person is in such a toxic environment that they think it's okay to talk to a customer like this. I'm sure I would be willing to bet big money that their manager is not like the most engaged and kind person, because there's no way an employee would feel empowered to snap at a customer unless they were snapped at a regular basis. So it all kind of rolls downhill, as the old saying goes.
Absolutely. You could tell when people are stressed out. You could tell that, when someone snaps at you, it's not necessarily you.
Yeah.
They have something going on in their lives, and most likely at their job, in their daily job. When it comes to like a customer, a relationship with a customer, right? When you interact in a customer service type of environment.
Yeah.
So, Jason, what do you believe it sets exceptional frontline managers apart from others? What are some qualities, and how do you identify such talent?
Good question. I look for people who, one, are naturally kind and who seem to have a genuine like for other human beings. I think you can teach so much around leadership, really any job. You can teach a big part of it, but what you can't teach is kindness and a general like for humanity. So those are the type of people that I tend to gravitate to when I build teams. I look for those kind of people. I don't necessarily look for experience. Like if I have two people that I'm interviewing, one has a tremendous amount of experience in the job that I need him to do, and the other has maybe some experience, but is kind, has a positive attitude, seems like they're willing to, learn and grow. And I can say, I wouldn't have a problem bringing this person into the team. I don't see them as a disruptor in a negative way. Yeah, that's really what I lean towards, those unteachable things.
How do you, Jason, how do you stay up to date with industry trends, best practices in team management and culture building? What are the resources that you use to stay up to date?
Sure. A lot of unintentional learning, and unstrategic learning, right? Just as it comes to me is through LinkedIn, honestly. A lot of things that people post, videos, articles, maybe their own thoughts, I digest those on a regular basis. I'm also a member of ATD Dallas, and so they send out newsletters and articles and have classes and things like that. So I'll go there. I'm also a part of a group called Conscious Capitalism. They have sessions as well as articles and things like that. So, and then two, just book recommendations, right? Like I had a conversation with another leader that I respect, and he said, hey, I know you're a fan of Patrick Lencioni and you're a fan of 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Have you met 3 Big Questions for a Frantic Family? I said, I have not read that one. That sounds awesome. So I'm currently listening to Patrick Lencioni's 3 Big Questions for a Frantic Family. So sometimes it's by happenstance and sometimes it's more intentional. But those are really the resources that I go to on a regular basis.
Thank you for sharing. Can you share now any specific strategies or practices that you recommend for maintaining a positive team culture, especially in challenging times?
Yes. First, read the book. No, I'm just kidding. It really is about communication. And there's two aspects to communication. One is the professional communication. Are you sharing regularly what are the goals of the business, aligning on what are the goals of the individual, talking about where systems and processes can be improved, where you can improve things like customer experience. And on the other end is personal communication. Are you just checking in with your employees? Are you asking them how their weekend went? Are you spending time and having some lunch? Because if you're only talking to your employees about business, that's the extent of your relationship. If you're not getting to know them as human beings, when times get tough and you as a leader need to kind of push your team to perform, right? You're seen as the boss. There's not that connection outside. And so that is super important. And again, that goes back to where I like to find people who like other humans. That comes naturally, right? You reach out to them. Now with a virtual environment, Adrian, I have to be honest with you. There are times that I have to be intentional about making connections with people on my team. I have to ping them to say, hey, good morning. How was your weekend? Because we can, especially with a virtual environment, we can get so engrossed in our own work that the only time I was reaching out at points was just to ask them about a project or give them additional work. And I found myself disconnected in that personal way. So communication, professional and personal, would be my answer to helping maintain a positive and healthy culture, even through lean times.
Next section of our conversation, Jason, is the rapid fire question section. You ready?
All right, I'm ready.
So, how did a failure or apparent failure set you up for future success?
So, moment of vulnerability, Adrian. I was moved from a property manager after about 6 years to a regional manager role. And I'm sure that there are people who love being a regional manager. It was not for me. I felt very disconnected. I wasn't as invested in it. And I had some regrets about leaving my on-site team to become a regional. And there was a project that I was working on that was a high-profile project for a high-profile client. And taking responsibility, I did not do well. And I did not perform. Ultimately, what that showed me was I don't want to be in this role. And because I didn't want to be in that role, I started to explore some other things. And I was given the opportunity to then move into a learning and development role. And so having that clarity about what I wanted, that failure catapulted me into self-reflection and ultimately was like, okay, here's what I enjoyed about my old job. I don't want to go back to my old job necessarily. I do want to evolve in my career, but this isn't the evolution for me. Finding that role within learning development was the path that moved me in a direction that I'll never go back on. So to answer your question, moment of vulnerability, I screwed up, and that opened the door for me to have a really clear idea of what it was I wanted to do.
Next, what advice would you give a young person getting ready to enter the real world? They just graduated high school or college. They're ready to, take their first, real job, to be on their own.
I'd say invest in real estate. One of the things, there's a person on LinkedIn that I follow. He has this great philosophy. He's not working for wealth. He's working for time. The more time that he owns for himself, the more successful he is. And so he invests in real estate, small communities, houses, things like that. And he says, now I work for myself, and I work 5-6 hours a day, sometimes 8, sometimes 10, depending on what's going on, if he's buying a new asset. But he said, my time is mine. I get to stop and have lunch with my kid. I get to go on vacation. I can work remotely wherever I want. And so I'd say find a way to build wealth so that you own your time.
This is amazing. I'm right there with you. Trying to do
I
that.
know you are. I've seen your posts. I know.
Trying to do that on my own. Trying to figure it out, but definitely real estate investment is probably one of the best things.
I haven't figured it out yet. So maybe you and I can talk offline and you can help me figure that out.
Absolutely. Maybe we figure it out together.
There you go.
Jason, in the last 3 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
Honestly, that I have value beyond my immediate circle of influence. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book. I feel confident that over my working career, over my life, that people who are in my immediate sphere of influence, I can have a positive impact on them. And it's only in the past 3 years that I now believe I can have positive impacts on people beyond my immediate sphere, people that I don't know. And that aligns with, so I've done a lot of, I know this is rapid fire, so please stop me if my answers are going too long for rapid fire.
Go for it, by all means.
I've done a lot of self-work, and Simon Sinek, his book, Start With Why, was a big influence on my life. And so I've taken time to reflect on, what is my why? Why do I get out of bed every morning? What's my reason for existing? And I defined it as, I'm here to help other people do the best that they can do in whatever it is they're trying to do, so that they can live a more fulfilled and engaged life. And so when I was really able to articulate that, every time in my past that I have felt really aligned and in the moment and in a flow state was when that was true. When I was directing plays in Chicago, I was helping actors give the best performance possible. I was giving audience members the best experience that they could have. When I coached my kids' t-ball team, I was helping these little kids do the best that they can do in this new sport that they were learning. Ultimately, in management, I was helping all of my team members perform the best that they can perform, right? And now in learning and development, the same thing. So writing a book like this just aligns with what I'm trying to do. The book may be for you, it may not. You may read it and go, this is the best thing ever, I'm totally going to use it. Or, yeah, that was fine. But that's not the point. The point for me is, can it help you in some way? And so having that impact beyond my immediate sphere, that's the belief that has really kind of changed how I look at life and what I do.
When you lose focus or feel overwhelmed, how do you get back on track?
One of it is to remind myself of the reason I get out of bed every morning. But two, when things are chaotic, I know it sounds cheesy, but lists. I just make lists. What do I have to do? How can I check it off? I'm also a big believer in silence and breaks. Like, I've been going for walks now early in the morning, and I don't listen to anything sometimes. Sometimes I just walk in the quiet. And so silence can help. We have so much media, right? There's always something. There's a video, there's a reel, there's a post, there's music, there's a ping, there's a text. Sometimes just complete silence helps you go, okay, here's my perspective.
Jason, we're about to wrap up the conversation. A great one, I should say. What is something, like one thing you wish you would have said you didn't have the opportunity to say, or what is an answer to a question you wish I would have asked and I didn't get opportunity?
To be selfish and self-promoting, Jason, where can people find your book? And the answer would be, you can find that.
That's my question next.
Oh, okay. Well, you hadn't asked it yet. All right, we'll skip that one. We'll skip that one then. I don't know. You ask such great questions, and that's one thing I love about your podcast is you're able to like dig in. If there's one piece of encouragement that maybe I can give to managers who feel overwhelmed right now is it's gonna be okay that these seasons of chaos can be temporary. And I want to encourage you to remain realistically optimistic. It's okay to acknowledge what's going on, but it's never okay to think that it's permanent. These things are temporary. Believe that it will change. Believe that you can change it, and it will. So remain realistically positive, realistically optimistic is what I would encourage them.
Excellent advice. Now promo time. So tell us, how can we find, where can we find your book? How can people get a hold of you and contact, you, and maybe have a conversation if you're open up to it?
Yeah, I'm totally open to it. I love having these type of conversations. You could find the book in paperback, in digital, or audio on Amazon. You can also order the book direct from my website, www.jasonk.com. To contact me, you can contact me through the website or through LinkedIn. Either way works. Or if you know me and you need to contact me, you probably have my phone number. So those are the ways you can get a hold of me.
Amazing conversation today, Jason. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us.
My pleasure.
Have this, have this amazing conversation, and I hope to get you back here later down the road to maybe do a second episode to talk more about company culture, things you're passionate about. Your book, your next book, hopefully.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. We're gonna try to get this one sold out first.
Do you have it with you? Can you show it to the camera?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do that.
This is it. It's, you know what? And honestly, I have a hard time with self-promotion. I feel like squeamish when people are like, oh, why don't you tell me more about your book? I'm like, okay, do you want to read it? So that's probably not a good thing for me. But I have gotten some feedback from people who I don't know, who I've never met, who are like in the industry, and they say, I really like this book. I felt seen. All of the characters, I was like, I know them. And so it's not just an industry specific book, but if you are a manager in multifamily, you are going to recognize yourself and other people in this book. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. If anything else, you will enjoy the heck out of it as just a piece of nostalgia for sure.
Excellent conversation. Again, thank you for coming and taking the time to be here today with us, Jason.
Sir, my pleasure. Thank you.
Everybody, thank you very much for watching us today. This is Multifamily Chronicles. I'm your host, Adrian Danila, and I hope to see you back here soon. Have a great day.